L'Elisir d'Amore by Donizetti. Of the wealth of wonderful tunes that make up Donizetti's comic opera L'Elisir d'Amore, the Elixir of Love, the aria Una furtiva lagrima, one furtive tear, is the best known. But, as we'll discover, there is much more to this comic opera than beautiful melody alone. Not, of course, that there is anything wrong with beauty of melody or beauty of vocal expression. Far from it. Indeed, it's the particular quality of beauty in singing, exquisite melodies beautifully phrased, that has given the name bel canto to a whole movement in opera. This was the age of bel canto. We should step back a moment to put bel canto into its historical perspective. Opera originated in Italy in around 1600 as part of that great movement we call the Renaissance, which was a conscious attempt to give new life to the values of ancient Greece and Rome. Among these values was the belief that Greek drama was probably not spoken, as often in modern theatre, but sung. So the idea emerged of presenting plays in which the story, and more importantly, the emotional content, were carried forward by the sung rather than the spoken word. The idea caught on, The first opera was presented in Florence in 1597, but it was in Venice that the idea took fire. The early stages of the art form in the 1600s were dominated by the careers of two great masters, Monteverdi and Cavalli. Opera grew and developed roots and branches throughout Europe, reaching a special peak at the end of the 18th century with the operas of Mozart. The focus returns to Italy in the early 1800s with a group of composers, Rossini, Donizetti and Bellini, who were the three most prominent figures in the movement we know as bel canto. It is always a source of wonder how at certain points history throws up an astonishing assembly of talents, all working in the same place at roughly the same time, and initiating a movement, for want of a better word, a movement that changes everything. The Renaissance is one such movement, when Raphael, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and a host of others produce seemingly miraculous creations. In drama, we have the Elizabethan age, where Beaumont and Fletcher, Marlowe and Thomas Kyd competed with Shakespeare for preeminence. In politics, we have the birth of the American Constitution, when such titans as Jefferson, Adams, Franklin and Washington pooled their talents. And in literature, few periods surpass the creativity of the poets of the Romantic age, Keats, Shelley and Byron among them. The trio of Rossini, Donizetti and Bellini may not be as intellectually weighty as any of these, but their music is a constant source of delight nevertheless, and the careers of these composers constitute what we now call the age of bel canto. That music is, of course, the overture to Rossini's The Barber of Seville, the most durable comic opera in history, and among the greatest. It helps to put Donizetti into a historical context if we take a moment to look at the careers of his great contemporaries, Rossini and Bellini. Of the three composers, Rossini was born first and died last. Indeed, while Donizetti and Bellini burnished their images as romantic figures in the traditional way, either by dying young or in distress, or both, Rossini lived into his mid-70s, plump and prosperous, his composing days long behind him, and replaced by a new reputation as bon viveur, conversationalist, and social arbiter. Rossini is in many ways the most lovable of all composers, and one anecdote, often repeated, will show why. Rossini loved luxury, and legend has him sitting up in bed, surrounded by plump pillows and satin sheets, writing a tenor aria for one of his operas. He completed it, put it on the bed beside him, and it slipped off. But Rossini was so lazy, that he couldn't be bothered to get out of bed to pick it up. So he wrote another tenor aria. The Italians have a wonderful expression. Se non è vero, è ben trovato. If it's not true, it might as well be, to explain how this sort of anecdote, even if not true, defines a person's character. The overture that you are hearing is another case in point. We admire it as the perfect tailor-made introduction, setting the mood for the sparkling comedy of Figaro the Barber and his adventures in sunny Seville. So it is a shock to learn that it had been used by Rossini for 2 previous operas. One, a deeply serious drama about Queen Elizabeth I of England, and that Rossini, perennially short of time, merely recycled it at the last moment from that opera to another, and finally to The Barber. We can make the point even better with excerpts from 2 Naxos recordings. In the final pages of the complete recording of The Barber of Seville, the tenor has an aria, a rondo, or round in English, called Cessa di più resistere. Here is the main melody.
Al più lieto, più felice, e mio cor deco via mattina, non fuggite, o lieti stanti della mia felicità. The following year, Rossini was caught short for an aria to complete his lovely comedy La Cenerentola, Cinderella. So he simply recycled the tenor aria from last year's hit, edited it a bit, and presented it as a mezzo-soprano aria, again a rondo. Non più mesta. But placing humour aside, always difficult when dealing with the life or works of Rossini, we have to recognise that he was also a deeply serious and influential composer of tragic operas, who wrote many more serious works than he did comic ones. Rossini's overture to William Tell has been traduced by images of cowboys in masks and white suits over the years. However, it is worth remembering Donizetti's superb compliment. Rossini wrote the first and last acts of William Tell. God wrote the second act. Passing over Donizetti for the moment, in order of birth, we come to Vincenzo Bellini, who in many ways best fits the romantic image. Pale, handsome in a delicate sort of way, deeply troubled and dying fashionably young at the age of 34 in 1835. In many ways, his particular style of melodic invention, long, beautiful, arching melodies, virtuoso singing requiring exquisite tone and marvellous breath control, are the clearest expression of what we mean by bel canto. Everyone remembers the Canadian writer Marshall McLuhan for his phrase, "The medium is the message." Well, it applies nowhere better than to passages like this one from Bellini's opera La Sonnambula, where the vocal beauty of line is the medium, is the message. Halfway between Rossini and Bellini,
comes Donizetti, born in 1787 in Bergamo, a town in the north of Italy between Milan and Venice. He died in 1848 at the age of 51. If we look at Donizetti's final operas in the context of our short historical survey of Italian opera, we see that they coincide with the first great successes of Donizetti's compatriot, Verdi, whose more robust style, as in La Forza del Destino, carried opera into the grand romanticism of the mid-19th century. And Verdi, in turn, was succeeded by Puccini, whose Turandot, first performed in 1926, marked the end of Italian opera as a popular art form of the people. But Puccini's great adieu to opera as a popular art form lay more than a century away when young Gaetano Donizetti first saw the wonderfully clear northern Italian light in the hill town of Bergamo, birthplace, incidentally, of another gentle giant, Pope John XXIII. Donizetti's dark cellar birthplace is now a national shrine and place of pilgrimage. Such is the affection and regard in which the composer is still held. His output was enormous. Around 70 operas, including revisions and second thoughts, but of these only 3 really have a completely secure place in the standard operatic repertoire. In order of composition they are Lucia di Lammermoor, The Elixir of Love, and Don Pasquale. 1 tragedy and 2 comedies, even though Donizetti, like Rossini, wrote many more operas on tragic themes than comic ones. Fans of Donizetti will be ringing up to protest at the exclusion from that list of Maria Stuarda, Roberto Devereux, and Anna Bolena, to mention only 3 works based on British historical subjects. And there must be many in the northwest of England for whom the title Emilia di Liverpool strikes a chord. But the fact remains that while Donizetti's tragic operas have been in and out of fashion, often according to the availability of great opera singers like Maria Callas, Janet Baker and Beverly Sills, who were able to do them justice, his comic operas, particularly Don Pasquale and The Elixir of Love, have held the stage since the dawn of the 19th century. And no wonder. Both have enchanting stories and a melodic inventiveness that delight the heart and ear. Although Donizetti was born in northern Italy, there hung about his name for many years a delightful legend that he was of Scottish descent. A quick glance in the Aberdeen telephone directory will yield the name of Izet. Popular enough in that part of the world. For a long time, legend had it that one Donald Izet, a Scottish soldier of fortune, settled in Bergamo, Italianized his name, and founded whatever the Italians have instead of clans. Don Izet becoming the Donizetti, from which our Gaetano was descended. Si non è vero... Well, in this case, recent research has shown that it is absolutely not vero. However attractive the tale, and however plausible it may be in the light of the peripatetic nature of Scotsmen then and now. If true, it might have helped explain the extraordinary success of Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor, a splendid example of a tragedy in the bel canto tradition based upon Sir Walter Scott's Gothic tale, The Bride of Lammermoor. 2 short extracts will convince us of the opera's quality and of Donizetti's mastery of his craft. Here, from a historic recording made in 1939, are the opening bars of one of the most famous sextets in all opera.
And here, from a modern recording, part of the famous mad scene from the same opera, where poor mad Lucy Ashton, having murdered her husband, descends in a blood-soaked gown, and to the horror of the wedding guests, gives an extraordinary display of the dementia that was later to claim the mind of Donizetti himself. Something of the more carefree nature of the heroine of Don Pasquale, Norina, may be gleaned from another historical recording. This one made at the Met in 1949, with Bido Sayo enchanting the listener in the opening autobiographical aria. Donizetti's family was not musical, though his two brothers both worked as military bandsmen, of which more later. One even rose to the giddy heights of chief of music to the Ottoman armies of Constantinople. Our Gaetano might have remained in similar obscurity were it not for the intervention of one of the unsung heroes of music, known variously as Johann Simon Mayr, and later, after his adoption into the Italian canon, as Giovanni Simone Mayr. He has three claims to fame. Musicologists like to point to the musico-dramatic device known as the Rossini crescendo. Here is an example from the overture to La Cenerentola. They tell us that this device, by which excitement is generated in music that is getting louder and louder and sometimes faster and faster, was, despite its name, not invented by Rossini, but by Giovanni Simone Mayr. Mayr's second claim to fame is a series of dramatic operas that merit footnotes in history books. One of these operas, Medea in Corinto, was exhumed for the 1974 Wexford Festival and promptly reinterred. Mayr's third achievement was to found a free school for young musicians in Bergamo in 1806, of which young Gaetano was an early graduate. Donizetti served the then normal apprenticeship of writing many small sacred, orchestral and instrumental pieces, and even a few operas, which have passed into the archives of history. The legend of his military service offers an entertaining pre-echo of the plot of The Elixir of Love. The legend is that his commanding officer was so dazzled by young Donizetti's musical talents that he released him. The truth is that a wealthy patroness bought his exemption, in much the same way as Adina will buy Nemorino's in our opera. Donizetti scored his first successes in Rome and Naples in 1822, and over the next few years turned out new operas with dizzying rapidity. Nowadays, when new works, plays or musicals have longer gestation periods than elephants, it is hard to imagine Rossini, Donizetti and their contemporaries producing an opera in 3 weeks, as Rossini is said to have done with The Barber of Seville, or 4 weeks, as Donizetti did with The Elixir of Love. But then the job of the composer in early 19th century Italy can best be likened to that of the television sitcom writer, producing new products for the market at speed. Opera was the popular art form of the day, and the Italian appetite for it was insatiable. Donizetti's first great success came in 1830 with Anna Bolena, based, of course, on the career of the second wife of Henry VIII. This was his first opera to be performed in the great cultural centres of London and Paris. 2 years, many successes and the odd failure later, came The Elixir of Love, written for Milan and premiered there on the 12th of May, 1832. It was an instant hit and has remained popular ever since. It has been described as a perfect sentimental comedy in a pastoral setting, and as being every bit as much a classic of its genre as Rossini's Barber of Seville. That genre is opera buffa, Italian comic opera, a delightful art form that is the direct descendant of the commedia dell'arte. Opera buffa would go into decline after Donizetti, perhaps discouraged by the political turmoil rife in 19th century Italy, but it would be revived, triumphantly, some might say capped, by Verdi, with his Falstaff, the greatest of all Italian comic operas and the climax of a great tradition. When Verdi has Falstaff sing "Tutto nel mondo è burla," all the world's a joke and man's a born clown, he was saying a last farewell to a great tradition. The fact that he set this very disrespectful sentiment to a perfect classical fugue gives you a hint of the measure of the man. But back to l'Elisir d'amore, usually translated as the elixir of love, but perhaps better rendered as the love potion. The opera is based on a play by the French writer Eugène Scribe and fashioned into a libretto by Felice Romani. The idea of a love potion that makes people fall in or out of love is an ancient theatrical device, and in the 19th century it was one used by such mighty pundits as Richard Wagner in his Tristan und Isolde, and by such humble practitioners as the young Gilbert and the younger still Sullivan in their early opera The Sorcerer. The plot is simple enough to be contained in a single sentence. The hero, Nemorino, loves Adina, but is too shy to propose, until offered a potion by a travelling medical quack that gives him the courage to win her love. That the magic potion is nothing more than cheap red wine does not surprise us. Wine, woman, and some very delightful song combining to great effect. A word on names, because the choice of names for the characters seems to imbue them with a kind of pantomime innocence. The heroine is Adina, Little Ada, and she is a far more interesting character than most of the other Inas and Ettas who crop up in opera of this period.
Nemorino is presumably a diminutive of the Latin Nemo, no one, so little Mr. Nobody seems to sum him up. Belcore, the blustering army sergeant, translates as good heart, and Dr. Dulcamara, the travelling medicine man, is Dr. Sweet and Sour. And lastly, a word on popularity, because the composers of this golden age of Italian opera, it was a golden age, were as concerned with their ratings as any television sitcom writer today. The way you make the audience enjoy and remember your work is by selling them on the tunes. We'll pick up 4 hints on how to do this in the course of this introduction. The present overture, a short prelude really, does not in fact make use of the common device of introducing many of the piece's best melodies before the curtain rises. It is simply a happy piece of mood setting, charming, but with no specific reference to the tunes that follow in the opera. The opera proper opens on a scene of bucolic charm, the courtyard of a farm belonging to our heroine Adina. She is sitting reading. Nemorino, our hero, is standing idly by, and the peasants are doing what peasants do best, at least in comic opera, which is singing about how nice it is to take noontide break from the day's labours in the shade. Nemorino is in almost every way the vocal star of this opera, which is why it is such a popular role with lyric tenors. He has some wonderful melodies to sing, beginning in the early pages of Act 1. Quanto è bella! How beautiful she is, sings the lovesick boy. And this gives us the opportunity to drop hint number 2 on selling your tunes. Have the orchestra play them first, to fix the melodic idea in the audience's mind. Then have the voice enter with the same lovely lyrical melody.
Quanto è bella, quanto è cara, più la vedo e più mi piace, ma in quel cor non è sol capace, lieve
It's that sort of lyrical outpouring of pure melody over the simplest of orchestral accompaniments that is the very art of bel canto. Nemorino goes on to compare his own alleged stupidity with the scholarship of his admired Adina, who is reading a book, often a sign of liberal thinking in young women, and therefore to be discouraged. Both Adina in this opera and Norina in Don Pasquale are first discovered reading,
which would have sent a signal to contemporary audiences that their minds were on things other than the purely demure. But listen to this lovely melodic device that is part of Donizetti's style. As Adina sings from the novel she is reading, the orchestra has the principal melodic interest, a lovely waltz-like tune. When the voice begins, it repeats the same note, and only well into the phrase does it take over the tune. A charming device, and as the guidebooks say, very typical. The story Adina is reading is the legend of two characters, Tristram, or Dristram, or Tristan, and Isolde, best known in operatic circles as Tristan and Isolde. Here they are referred to as Tristano and Isotta, but the message is the same. Isotta was a cold, unfeeling beauty whose heart Tristano won only after he had slipped her a love potion. Adina tells the peasants, who are curious, what the book is about, and the seed of an idea is planted in the small but fertile mind of Nemorino. Next on the scene is Sergeant Belcore, the blustering soldier of popular legend, and beneath his bluster, as his name tells us, is a good-hearted soul. He is introduced onto the stage with the sort of Toy Town march that would have delighted Gaetano's military brothers. Then we have one of the many wonderful comic moments in which the opera abounds, as Belcore makes his first move on Adina, presenting her with a bouquet of flowers, and comparing himself with the hero Paris, who presented the golden apple to the loveliest of the three Greek goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Belcore describes himself as being like the graceful Paris, come paride vezzoso. Reactions vary to this outpouring. The women are amused at Belcore's lack of modesty, and Nemorino is intimidated by the threat.
But Belcore's disarming self-confidence is irresistible, and one phrase fortunately retains its comic rhyme in English translation. I'm a sergeant, and I'm ardent.
Son galante, e son sergente, non va bella che resista alla vista d'un cimiero, e di amarte io guerriero, la madre dell'amor, e di amarte io guerriero, la madre dell'amor, e di amarte io guerriero, la madre de amarte Dio guerriero, la madre dell'amor.
A small musical point here, but a telling one. This recording properly uses a forte piano instead of a harpsichord for the recitatives, the sung dialogue used to advance the action between musical numbers. Its particular sound places us firmly in the early 19th century, in contrast to the more tinkling harpsichord of the 18th. Here's just a sample.
Intanto mia ragazza occuperò la piazza, alcuni istanti concedi a miei guerrieri al coperto posar.
Volentieri, mi chiamo fortunata di potervi offrire una bottiglia.
Obbligato, io son già della famiglia.
In the next short scene, Nemorino attempts to press his suit, so to speak, on Adina, and asks why she will not commit to him. Her answer is couched in another of those exquisite lyrical melodies beautifully floated on the voice that define bel canto. The melody sounds equally beautiful when Nemorino takes it over.
Chiedi al rio perché gente dall'avanzo pedita, corre al mare che
and the material develops into a duet to end the scene. We next meet one of opera's great comic characters, Dr. Dulcamara, travelling quack and medicine man, who has come to this remote village to peddle his extraordinary elixir or potion. He never goes anywhere without his personal trumpeter. Listen how this super salesman begins his pitch. Udite o rustici. One has to question whether referring to your clients as rustics is good sales practice, but listen also as the orchestra, with downward sweeps, tells us the man is a fake.
Udite posticii.
The quack announces himself as Dr. Dulcamara and launches into an irresistible patter song, praising the virtues of his amazing elixir, which will cure every disease known to man. Patter merchants were a great tradition in 19th century comic opera. Remember Figaro?
Ah, bravo Figaro, bravo bravissimo, ah, bravo Figaro, bravo bravissimo, a te fortuna, non mancherà. La 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 la. A te fortuna, non mancherà.
Here is his soul brother, dazzling the rustics with his sales technique.
E muove I paralitici, spedisce gli apopletici, gli asmatici, gli asfitici, gli isterici, gli diabetici, guarisce gli impagnitili, e strofole rachitili, e tira il mal di fegato che in moda diventò. Mirabile dei civici, mirabile del fegato, guarisce I paralitici, spedisce gli apopletici, comprate il mio specifico, voi vedove donzelle, voi giovani galanti, per poco ve lo do. Avanti, avanti, vedove, avanti, avanti, bandoli, comprate il mio specifico, per poco ve lo do, sì, sì, per poco ve lo do, sì, sì, per poco ve lo do, sì, sì, per poco ve lo do.
Dulcamara's potion is, of course, cheap wine, which he peddles by offering it not for this price, not even for that price, but a rock-bottom price. Dutch courage by Dutch auction. Nemorino asks if it's the same potion that worked for Isotta, and is told yes. His gratitude and the doctor's incredulity that such a simpleton is allowed out without a keeper are encapsulated in a wonderful patter duet.
Ecco il magico liquore.
Obbligato, fossi obbligato, son felice, son beato, Eliside, di tal bontà, benedetto chi ti fa.
Nel paese ti ho girato,
di un felice, son beato,
nel paese ti ho girato, di un mezzo rito, domani quali
obbligato, son felice, son beato, Eliside, di tal bontà,
non si trova, non si dà, non è quali
obbligato, son felice, son beato, Eliside, di tal bontà,
non si trova, non si dà,
non si trova e
non si dà,
Left alone, Nemorino drinks the potion. And sure enough, it gives him the confidence he has hitherto lacked, which Adina soon notices.
La 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 finora amor non sente. La 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 la
Adina laughs, and Nemorino's reaction to her seemingly cruel indifference and her sympathy for the foolish boy are rendered in a wonderfully lyrical duet full of verve and energy.
Esulti pur la barbara, per poco alle mie pene, domani avranno termine, domani m'amerà la barbara, domani m'amerà
The mood is shattered by the return of Belcore, singing a fine piece of bombast. Tran, tran, tran. A siege is a very trying business, in war and in love. Belcore's jealous pursuit of Adina, her amused agreement to marry him in due course, and Nemorino's Dutch courage combine in a trio of real power.
Che cosa trova a ridere? Cotesto si è voluto. Ora lo piglia scampole. Se non va via di qua. Ora lo piglia scampole. Se non va via di qua. Che cosa trova a ridere? Cosa si immagina? Ora c'è quel dito. Ora lo piglia scampole. Ora lo piglia scampole. Se non va via di qua. Lo piglia scappole, lo piglia scappole. La sua si immagina toccare il
A finale like this depends on contrast for its effect. So when Adina seems to give in to Belcore's request that they get married at once, because he has received an order to leave the following morning, Nemorino has a tender lyrical section where he begs Adina to wait at least until tomorrow, by which time he hopes the potion will have taken full effect. But the public have been promised a wedding with accompanying feast and are determined to have one, so the act ends with a wonderfully exhilarating and complex ensemble as all the characters express their enthusiasm, and Nemorino his dismay. Listen as Nemorino calls on Dr. Dulcamara for help. This ensemble shows Donizetti's mastery of the soloists and orchestra. Listen especially for the virtuoso string writing. The Rossini crescendo with full chorus. In all, a great operatic ensemble with all the stops pulled out, providing a superbly exhilarating end to a lively act.
Act 2 opens with a lively chorus full of joy and expectation as the crowd gathers for the feast which will mark the wedding of Adina to Belcore. Again, to heighten our appreciation, the tune is introduced first, in full orchestra. Then the chorus enters to call for a toast. There is an incident now when Dulcamara, who is always full of surprises, presents Adina with the sheet music of a duet he has picked up in Venice, and suggests that he and she sing it together. It's the tale of a fisher girl called Nina and a rich old senator by the name of Old Tridenti, which means Old Three Teeth. More fun and games with comic names. Tridenti tells Nina he is rich and she is pretty, so why not make a thing of it? Nina responds that she prefers a gondolier who is more her own age. It is a barcarolle, a lovely tune imbued with an especially graceful and springing rhythm. Again, the orchestra primes us.
Io son ricco e tu sei bella, io ducati e vezzi hai tu, perché a me sarai tu bella Nina mia, che vuoi di più?
Quale onore un senatore pedapore supplicar, ma modesta gondoliera un par mio mi vo sposar.
Idol mio non più rigori, fa felice un senator.
Eccellenza troppo onor io non merito un senator.
Silenzio, zitti! Adorata barcaruola, prendi oro e lascia amor, lieve questo lieve vola, e sa quello e resta ognor.
Quale onore un senatore pedapore supplicar, Mazzanetto un giovinetto che mi piace vo sposar.
Idol mio non più rigori, fa felice un senator.
Eccellenza troppo onor far felice un senator.
The subtext of this second act is that while on one hand Adina would seem to be keen to marry Belcore, she is forever looking over her shoulder to keep Nemorino's attention. The latter has seen the notary at the wedding feast, assumes the worst, and asks Dr. Dulcamara for another dose of the potion, though he admits he has no money.
There now follows a pivotal scene in which Belcore, who is a recruiting sergeant, tries to sell the timid Nemorino on the idea of enlisting, by offering him a sign-up fee of 20 scudi. This would, of course, solve all Nemorino's cash flow problems. In this extract, Nemorino's recitation of the dangers of military life is punctuated by Belcore's reiteration of its attractions.
Ai perigli della guerra io sovente sposto sono
20 scudi
che domani la patria terra sia congiunti ahimè abbandono
e pensonanti,
ma so pur che fuor di questa altra strada a me non resta per poter del cor cadina
grande fide le bandiere, oggi non sia morti piace con le piste di bandiere, con le piste di bandiere.
Chi un giorno tiene a disa
Sempre lieto, sempre gaio, a difende il centinaio, di Costanza non s'annoia, non si perde a sospirar, non si perde a sospirar.
La vita può lasciar
Prendiami la bella gioia, accompagnami la Prendiami la bella gioia, accompagnami la Prendiami la bella gioia, accompagnami la
We are not claiming Mozartian depths for this music, but it is interesting how Donizetti cleverly paints a musical portrait of these two attractive, if contrasting, characters. By the end of this comic duet, there is some competitive virtuoso singing from recruiter and recruit.
Alla mano giovinotto dell'acquisto mi consolo, in complesso sopra e sotto non mi sembri un buon pigliolo. Ho ingaggiato il mio rivale,
non sai
anche questa è da contar.
no,
Ho ingaggiato il mio rivale, anche questa è da contar. Ho ingaggiato il mio rivale, anche
The next incident has the village girls gossiping over the rumour that Nemorino's uncle has died, making him a millionaire, which of course adds immensely to his attractiveness. As the girls flock around him, Nemorino attributes his newfound success to the effects of the potion, and the change in his character is discussed in a lively quartet of Nemorino, Adina, the girls, and Dulcamara.
Io già mi immagino che cosa brami, già senti il farmaco di cor giammami, le mani palpiti di cuore amante, un solo istante tu devi provar, le mani palpiti di cuore amante, un solo istante hai da provare. cambiamento, mi spetta il solito incontro. Le palpiti, amor di me, hai da provar, di mia freddezza, di mia destrezza, hai da provar, le mani palpiti, hai da provar, di mia freddezza, i palpiti, hai da provar, le forza, le forza, le forza, le foglie, le palpiti, hai da provar.
La mano, meraviglia, meraviglia, meraviglia,
Adina questions Dulcamara, who claims total credit for his elixir, and Adina learns that Nemorino bought it in the hope of winning her love. She also learns that he enlisted in order to get the money to buy more of the elixir. There is another duet here that delightfully delineates character, as Adina sings in superb lyric form how Nemorino has become so attractive to women, and Dulcamara patters along beneath, agreeing and attributing the success to his potion.
Tutto il sesso femminino è per giovane impazzato, tutto il sesso femminino è per giovane impazzato. Checca tutte segue, tutte becca, e il gallo della checca tutte segue, tutte becca. Essa pure innamorata, essa pure innamorata. Ha bisogno del liquor, ha bisogno del liquor, e il gallo della checca tutte segue, tutte becca, e il gallo della checca tutte segue, tutte becca. Essa pure innamorata ha bisogno del liquor, essa pure innamorata, 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 essa pure innamorata ha bisogno del liquor, essa pure innamorata, 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 essa pure innamorata ha bisogno del liquor, ha bisogno, ha bisogno, ha bisogno del liquor, ha bisogno, ha bisogno, ha bisogno del liquor, ha bisogno, ha bisogno, ha bisogno del liquor.
The stage is now set for one of the great showstoppers in opera, the aria Una furtiva lagrima. It is performed so often that we can easily underestimate its subtleties. For a start, it uses the device we have spoken of before, that of introducing the melody first in the orchestra. But, and here is the surprise, it is on the bassoon, surely the most unromantic of instruments, over a harp accompaniment. The effect is devastating. Then, when the voice does enter, we pick up on the third of the tricks used to implant the melody in the memory of the listener. The melodic phrase has a little turn at the end, and the orchestra repeats that little turn, or tail, for emphasis.
Una furtiva
The other factor that dazzles musicologists is that while the aria opens in the minor mode, by the end it has moved to the major, perhaps making the point of Nemorino's transition from introvert to extrovert, as he sings how he would rather die than be without Adina's love. There follows another incident, deeply tender and expressed in music of real charm. Adina has learned that Nemorino enlisted to have the money to buy the elixir. She has bought back the enlistment papers and hands them to him. "Take them," she sings. "Prendi." But listen first to the orchestra spelling out the tune, to the lovely cascade of woodwind tone, and to Adina's resigned and gracious falling phrase on "Prendi." The long duet this inspires will end with the two lovers expressing their love in music of real verve and energy.
Giuro
There is nothing left except the mandatory happy ending for everyone. Everyone, that is, but the defeated Belcore, though we have to believe that this victor in love and war will not be alone for long. The device employed to bring this delightful opera to a classic conclusion is the last of our tricks for sending the audience home humming the tunes. Take a hit from earlier on and reprise it. And what better tune than Dulcamara's lilting barcarolle, here recast as a sales pitch for his love potion, and reorchestrated for the full company.
Prediletti dalle stelle, io vi lascio un gran tesoro, tutte lui salute belle, allegria, fortune d'oro, rinverdite, rifiorite, rimpinguate ed arricchite della gente.